Microjoel here, Mark's assistant. Just a quick word before this episode begins. As you will notice, the guest audio cuts out a little during the first few minutes of the episode. Not to worry though, as the connection problem was solved early and the cutting only lasts for 5 or 6 minutes. That is all. Peace.
Hey everyone, welcome to the episode. With me today are Trap and Ptoing. Welcome to the show, you guys.
Hello.
Hey, what's up?
The first thing I wanted to talk to you guys about is, prior to making Firelancer, what are your guys' backgrounds with making shmups?
I've made a lot of them, but they've never really gone anywhere. Like I write the engine, I do all the fun programming code stuff, and then I have to make stages and enemies, and I'm just like, nah. And so I have like probably 5 or 6 different engines just laying around. I think they're all kind of bad, but each one's a learning experience, so it's not like it's all wasted time or anything.
That's really funny. I have a really similar experience myself where I'm pretty good with Game Maker and I've done the exact same thing. And then it gets to the point, I have no artistic skills at all, where I have to start incorporating sprites and making stages. I'm like, But I have all the engine stuff in place. Yeah, so I know exactly what that's like for sure.
Yeah,
I have no programming knowledge, or like not much. I did some stuff in Game Maker where I got into Game Maker a bit, and I started like a little shmup where I made the best menus ever, and
awesome.
And like a little test game, but like no scrolling or anything. So, and I gave up on that. But I've been working professionally in making graphics for games since 2005. So
wow.
none of them were shmups, but I've made pixel art for a fair amount of games. So yeah.
Would you say, being a pixel artist, is it hard to find jobs to take on, or is there quite a demand?
It depends. Like, it actually has gotten better over the years. The funny thing is, so when I started was, as I said, like around 2005, and that was when Game Boy Advance was still a thing, and then the Nintendo DS was a thing, and like for a while it was like the DS was kind of what was keeping pixel art alive for professional people. But then the indie thing kicked off, and like before that everyone was like, pixel art's dying out. But now it's like the indie scene and pixel art kind of becoming a legit style where people are just like, I'm going to make a game with pixel art because it's cool now. It's just like now also kind of, you can see it with 3D graphics, like the kind of PlayStation 1 aesthetic is kind of coming back.
Right.
So like pixel art is basically now established, and it's just like, okay, we're going to go with pixel art, and people like it, and yeah. So it's definitely, it's not necessarily easy getting jobs, but it's definitely doable.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember just talking about that shmup I was working on. I was thinking, well, I don't have a lot of money, but maybe I could just look into maybe commissioning a few enemy sprites or something. It looked like there was a lot of demand for it, at least on a smaller scale. I don't know about larger jobs though.
But yeah, I mean, like if you want to commission me for like some sprites, we can talk.
Maybe.
Not now,
I'll
but
think
afterwards.
about it. If I get my butt back to doing that. Well, awesome. And of course, Trap, I'm also really familiar with, prior to making Firelancer, your work with ROM hacking, and that's something that definitely intrigues me, so I cannot pass up the opportunity to talk a little bit about that. So I guess my first question is, how did you get started ROM hacking shmups?
Well, I kind of cut my teeth on programming and I guess technically embedded stuff way back in the day, like in like middle school and high school, and like doing goofy little random ROM hacks to like NES stuff where it's like you open it up in a hex editor and you're like, ooh, a whole bunch of numbers, and you just change numbers and stuff happens.
Yeah.
And eventually you you go on all the forums and stuff, and everyone's talking about how they're doing things, or all the secrets in the ROMs and all this stuff like that. And then you kind of pick up the knowledge that way. And it's sort of a thing that it's just like, it's one of those things I've always done. So it wasn't too weird to just like take it over to shooting games.
Sure.
It been a while between, like doing ROM hacking like I did back in the day and like the stuff that I did. Oh, geez, I guess those were actually a while ago. Never mind. Sometimes I still feel like the like Ketsuya range was like a year or two ago, and no, it's like 5 years ago.
No, that's crazy.
Yeah, time is strange, but yeah, I don't know. I just like always did it, and so it was like, well, let's take these games that I have issues with and try to fix the issues I have with them. And the results not always great, but it's a learning experience.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm not as nearly experienced, but I did have a little bit with how Super Metroid has all the tools and stuff, and some of the other games have tools available. But I'm assuming with shmups, you just got to get in there and really kind of know what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah. That's the other thing is all those NES ones, like everybody made like stuff for them, so you didn't have to learn all the nitty. But with this stuff,
Yeah,
yeah, there's no tool, so you gotta. It's a bit more involved. You have to go in, figure out how everything's laid out. There's more exploratory before you can actually do anything with it. I don't know. Some people like that, some people don't.
yeah, I think that's really impressive. What was that process like at first?
It's pretty much just you take the game program and you load it in a disassembler and then you step through it and then in like an emulator you'll a lot of them have like cheat engine sort of things in them. You can try to find memory addresses that have how many lives you have, how many points you have, and then you can set the emulator to just like stop whenever those get accessed. And so then you can find where in the code things are happening and you can kind of work outside in and uncover the structure of the thing you want to look for.
That's really fascinating.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to do a lot of this, but I find that, using breakpoints probably the quickest way to get to, like, if you're looking for a specific thing, that is easily the quickest way to get to it. But if you just want to like figure out how everything in the game works, then you want to start from the very beginning of it. That takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
I don't bother with that too much.
Well, speaking of looking for a specific thing, one thing that I feel like I have to ask about, because maybe it's becoming a little bit of an obsession of mine, but is there any way using ROM hacking to get any sort of clues on the DDP score glitch in your thought or expertise? Is that even possible?
I mean, yeah, but that's the sort of thing I mean where it's like you have to go through the entire code to figure that out.
Oh, damn.
Because it could come from anywhere. It could come from some bugged out enemy that's spawning in the stage layout, and then
Yeah,
you
I
happen
know.
to accidentally kill it because it's glitching out everywhere. There are kinds that could be easy to find, and that wouldn't be hard. But I get the feeling that still nobody publicly knows what it is. I doubt it's anything really easy to find, so it would probably take the full approach. You have to go through the entire program.
Wow. Damn.
Yeah,
Well, I definitely was wanted to hear your expertise. I'm planning on maybe next year just throwing myself, because there's a lot of speculation, just throwing myself at stage 6 to see if I can just somehow monkeying typewriter out some kind of glitch through sheer persistence, maybe.
yeah. Bananamatic apparently got it once, so
Yeah, yeah, I talked to him about that in the Discord, kind of trying to figure the clues of where it might occur, where it might not occur, stuff like that.
right.
So on to Firelancer itself, you guys. How did you guys come together? How did the project start?
So I was unemployed and I wanted to work on a shooting game, but all my previous engines I felt sucked too much, so I wanted to make a new one. And so I was just screwing around with the Wonder Witch development kit and just doodling like game concept stuff and just posting videos of it on YouTube with like soundtrack playing in the background, like some total bootleg stuff going on. But like it was just like, well, let's just screw around because I just wanted to try out concepts and ideas that I'd had that I hadn't implemented before. And then I just kept going with it, and it turned into part of a game. And then Ptoing messaged me on Shmup's forum after a while. I don't remember how long it was into it, but
yeah, I think I messaged you like April 14th. I still have like some of the messages as well.
Yeah, that would have been quick then, because I pretty sure I put the first one up in April anyways. So
yeah, I think it was like it was around preview 16, because I remember preview 17 is the first one with my boss in it.
I see. Yeah. I guess that probably would have been like a month or so later then. But yeah, it was kind of just like cranking stuff out, like ooh, I finally came up with a good way to structure stages, and so I was just like banging stage data out. It wasn't very good stage data, but it was like I got to do something to test this code that I wrote, and
Sure.
and so it turned into like writing garbage test data, and then refining that test data into an actual stage that felt kind of fun.
So you were doing this all on a WonderSwan dev kit? Is that what it was? The Wonder Witch? Is that what that is?
Yeah, the Wonder Witch is the official homebrew development kit. Like you could, I don't know, it's like $150 or something. It's a cartridge and a serial cable and a CD of software, and you just install the software and you can start making programs for WonderSwan and uploading them to your cart and playing them. Yeah.
So I'm assuming the WonderSwan, I did a little research on this and I was like, wow, this is a pretty obscure console. Does it have a flash cart for it then that you're able to use?
Yeah, it's there's one called the WS Flashmaster. It's fairly recent. I think it came out like 2 years ago or something. And it's quite nice. It's a little unfortunate that you gotta upload stuff over USB instead of an SD card or whatever, but it works pretty well, and it runs firelancer, so
Nice.
it's a very
That's all you need it for, right?
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, no, the flash mask is pretty good. And there's some Chinese flash carts from quite a while ago, but those have like, you got to take the cartridge and put it in this thing and connect that to your computer, and it's kind of bootleg, but
Yeah.
but those work too, and they're not that bad, so it all works.
So Ptoing, what inspired you to message Trap in the first place?
Well, well, first of all, I like Shmups, obviously, and I've obviously I haven't known Trap personally before that, but like I've seen that like he's done stuff before, like some cool stuff with ROM hacks and such. So I saw that he's like this definitely like a capable guy that can get stuff done if pressed to. And I saw like, yeah, it looked interesting. So I just like asked him like, plus I like restrictions. I really like working with restricted hardware, like graphical limitations and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I do like, I'm in the Commodore 64 demo scene, for example, and there's like really restricted graphics. And I really like that kind of stuff. Like that's what like, yeah, I love it. And so I was like, yeah, WonderSwan haven't done anything for that. Probably not going to get any chance to do that anytime soon again. Like, so I was just like, yeah, why not ask him? And then he basically told me like, yeah, I don't know, like there were like other artists that like offered before, but no one did anything really. So he told me like, yeah, you could make a boss that's like about this by this many pixels and make it like 3 colors plus transparency. And then I did that in like half an hour, and he was like, if I'm reading the message, like the first line was like, oh damn dude, that's sick as fuck. And then yeah, we went from there.
That's awesome. Sounds like with your professional background, I'm sure you're able to crank those sprites out pretty fast.
Yeah, it depends. Like the sprites are the smaller problem. The bigger problem graphically was the levels, because there's like a lot more kind of palette tweaking involved with like the levels and stuff like that. And but overall, it's like not that bad. It was more like how many tiles do we have? Like how many tiles is a level using for sprites, and then how many tiles can we use for backgrounds and so on? Because there's a total of
Yeah.
1,024, so it's a very limited system in that regard.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess to go back to the beginning, why the WonderSwan? Why the WonderSwan of all the, retro consoles out there? Or even handhelds?
Let's see. So I guess like 3 years before I actually started this, maybe it was only like 2 years, something like that. I forget why, but I bought. Oh wait, no, I think Rancor sent me a WonderSwan color for free or like super cheap or something. I don't remember why, but oh, that's why I wanted the Wonder Witch just because the whole concept was cool, and so I got that in a WonderSwan color for super cheap, and then I was kind of just interested in like pulling apart the system because the documentation for it was pretty sparse and not very good, and
Sure.
I wanted more. I wanted more details, so I spent a lot of time pulling apart the system and documenting it. And so by the time I wanted to write this game, I was like, well, I know a lot about WonderSwan and it's fun to write for, so let's just do that.
Yeah.
Because for the most part, I don't like making things for PC because it's a lot harder to get anything up and going, and it feels like if you run into an issue, it's really hard to solve. Whereas with these tiny embedded systems, they're so simple that it's really easy to figure out what you screwed up because everything's kind of just right there in front of you. And so it's easier to trace down everything and get stuff up off the ground without a lot of infrastructure around it. You can just be like, upload these tiles to memory and put this sprite here, put this sprite here, put this sprite here, and that's it. You don't have to set up DirectX. You don't have to make your render buffers. You don't have to deal with joystick input. You don't have to deal with crazy audio stuff. Like everything's just there, so it's really easy to get up and going. And that's why I mostly develop for weird old consoles instead of PC stuff, is I just think it's more fun. So it was kind of just more like, well, what's a weird, odd system I could develop this for? Oh, I've got WonderSwan. I could do that. It already has Tate. Great. Let's do it.
Yeah, that's funny. I was checking out because when I first heard about it coming out on the WonderSwan, I remember kind of knowing what a WonderSwan was. I was like, oh, that's Bandai's handheld, I think. And I thought it was kind of like a Neo Geo Pocket Color type system. I'm not 100% sure if that's still accurate, but I looked at some screenshots of it and some videos of it, and I was like, wait a minute, you could play this thing Tate because of the button layout. So does Firelancer run Tate, I'm assuming, on the WonderSwan? Like you can hold
Yep,
the handheld vertically?
absolutely. That's the only
That's
way
really
you can
cool.
play it on there. Actually, you can't play it horizontal because that would have been horrible to write. I wouldn't have wanted to do that. But yeah, like there's a bunch of other games on WonderSwan that do that. Like even actually one of the release games is kind of a mixed orientation game where it's a platformer, and so you play it horizontally, and then some parts of it's like, oh, time to turn the console, and then you play it vertical. And
That's a cool little concept.
yeah,
That's
there's a
that's
bunch of games on the system that do
Ghost
that.
and
It's
Ghouls
kind of
one,
fun.
right? I think that's the Ghost and Ghouls game on the WonderSwan that does that, like the flippy thing where it depends on
Yeah,
the
that one
stage.
does it. Klonoa does it. There's a lot of them actually. There's more than you would expect. And there's actually the first WonderSwan color game is you play it diagonally. You hold it so you've got the top pad on your left hand, the A and B buttons on your right hand. So it's like at like a 30-degree angle. It's really weird.
I've never even heard of that before, like the concept of playing a game half rotated.
It's very strange. It is a very odd game.
So it sounds like you two were the perfect team because Ptoing prefers having restricted as far as the visuals, and it sounds like you like having more restricted systems for your programming.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like the right two people for the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, like from speaking personally, like I know quite a few people, obviously, from the pixel art community, and a lot of them, especially like the younger people, they are not super into this kind of stuff, like making restrictions. And then the other problem is that I use Cosmigo Pro Motion, which is a program specifically made for pixel art, and it's kind of built on the paradigm of Deluxe Paint, which is like an old Amiga and like DOS, but mostly on the Amiga. And it was kind of like the standard in the 90s for making like computer art, basically for games. And I don't know of any other pixel art program nowadays where you can do color tile checking. So for example, if I make the backgrounds and they have like all the different 8x8 pixel tiles, and each of those tiles has to fit into a specific 16 color palette, I can check if all my tiles, all my colors, even if I have dupes, are like in the right palette. And I don't know any other program that does that. So it would be a pain in the ass to do this without having knowledge of promotion and using that. And many people don't pixel in promotion. Like that's like professionals that like me, they do, but many use Photoshop, even professionals. They use Photoshop, and I'm like, why would you use Photoshop to pixel? But yeah.
Is it because the program you're using isn't just about the aesthetic of pixel art, it's also making sure the thing will actually run on the hardware itself? Whereas I'm assuming Photoshop has no idea.
Photoshop is incredibly bad when it comes to indexed work. Like it's really bad because it was never made for that. And the program, so Cosmico Promotion, the guy, it's like one German guy as well who's developing it, and I'm beta testing it since like 2008. So he's made it so that before that, when Game Boy Advance and Game Boy Color were a thing, so that people could make games using that, and like lots of professional companies doing Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance games in the West, like in America and Europe, are using that or were using that. So it has all that kind of stuff built in, and that's like super helpful. And yeah, if you don't have that, making a game for a restricted system like the WonderSwan would be a massive pain.
I can imagine. So when you were using this program, did it know anything about the WonderSwan's color palette, or did you have to figure that out on your own and do some custom tweaking?
No, there's no custom tweaking involved. In promotion, you can set the bit depths per channel. So, for example, the Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, they have like 5 bits per channel, so 15-bit color, total of like 32,000 something colors. And the WonderSwan has like 4 bits per channel, so that's 12 bits, which is 4,096 total colors. So I can just set, this is my bit depths for each channel, and that's it. And then it doesn't let me use any other colors. And then I just set up my palettes, and I tell it I have 16 palettes, 16 colors for each palette, and then I can check based on that. So it's very simple, it's straightforward.
That's really cool. That's cool to learn about, because I think a lot of people, when they think about pixel art, myself included, I'll admit, we just think of the aesthetic of the pixels, but we don't think about the bit depths you got to get right and the palettes you got to get right, otherwise it's not going to run.
Well, I mean, it probably would run in some way because that Trap has a program that he runs all the graphics he gets from me through, and I'm not sure what it would do. I'm not sure what it would do if it would have the wrong colors. I guess it would like crunch it to the closest color, but like
it's worse than that. It just takes the top left pixels palette and just uses that for the whole tile. So, but it does scream at me. Okay. It screams at me very loud if that's not the case for all the pixels, though. So that's why I am so on the ball at telling you that you screwed it up.
I mean, what would it do if a pixel has like a palette that's not in 4 bits? So if it's like not 4455 or whatever, if it's like some F7 or something like that.
Yeah, that would just drop the bottom bits. So it would just look a little bit wrong, but nothing too weird.
That's good. I was just imagining, like, I don't know, some kind of compile errors or something. I don't know. I have no idea, but
I should make it error, but I don't, because I'd rather have it work than yell at me and make it impossible for me to fix it.
Very true. On the topic of the WonderSwan's hardware itself, what is it? It's like, for the people, and myself too, what would you compare it to as far as, the graphics and visuals? Is it somewhere between the GBA and Game Boy Color? Somewhere like that?
I would say so, yeah. Actually, in some ways, it's a bit worse. Actually, yeah. Like, it's definitely better than the Game Boy Color in terms of how many palettes you have and how many colors on screen. It's not quite as good as the GBA, because the GBA, you have 16 palettes, 16 colors each for both the background and the sprite. So you have like 32 palettes total, if I remember correctly. And on the WonderSwan Color, it's basically like on the Super Nintendo, where you have eight palettes for the sprites, 8 palettes for the backgrounds, but you can use the sprite palettes for the backgrounds as well, which you can't do on the Super Nintendo, for example. So it's actually a bit better than the Super Nintendo, but at a lower bit.
Huh.
Yeah, but at a lower bit depth. It's only 12-bit instead of 15-bit, so you have like more colors on the Super Nintendo.
One thought that actually occurred to me, Trap, is when you guys were programming, like, I know the Super Nintendo has a bunch of problems with slowdown and stuff with shmups. Did you guys run into any of that sort of thing with WonderSwan? Was it able to handle what was going on screen without horrible slowdown issues?
Well, yes and no. At various points in development, it had been very slow. It had lots and lots of slowdown, but I don't like slowdown at all. So I've put a lot of work in trying to optimize everything up so that it's fast enough to have near to no slowdown. And I somehow managed it because it does run with almost no slowdown on the actual console. It still kind of impresses me that it was able to do that. So it's I'm quite happy with the performance. But the console is like, the actual power that it has is kind of just the right amount. It's like faster than the Mega Drive for sure. It's like I'd say it's about 1.5 times to 2 times as fast as the Mega Drive.
Okay.
So it's like it's not too fast, but it's also not too slow. So it's the sort of thing where if your game is simple, you don't really have to put much thought into optimizing it. But once you get complicated, then you can still make it run well. It's just you have to put in work to do it. And I think that's
Sure.
a lot of fun. So I think it's like I kind of feel like it's just the right intersection of power and simplicity to be a really fun system to work with.
That sounds really cool. I think I must have been underestimating its power a little bit, because I was actually surprised to hear it more capable than a Mega Drive or a Super Nintendo. I was thinking of it more like a Game Boy type, but no, sounds like it's got more juice than that.
Game Boy is an 8-bit processor. This is like 16-bit, right?
Yeah, this is basically the same CPU as the original PC. It's an 8086. Well, in this case, it's a 186, but you know.
But that's like one of the oldest 16-bit processors, right?
Yeah.
That behind the architecture, yeah.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I guess it is one of the oldest 16-bit architectures. They optimize the actual CPU quite well. It has very good performance characteristics. So even though it runs at 3 megahertz, it actually has quite a lot of juice in it.
Plus, not to forget that Trap actually found like out about like an undocumented register thing where he can change the hertz, like the refresh rate, arbitrarily. So all the WonderSwan handhelds, they run at 75 hertz, and he changed it to like just about 60. So that means we have about 20% more performance actually from that, like in terms of like computation cycles.
It natively wants to run at 75 FPS type thing?
Yeah, the default setting for that register makes the screen refresh rate be about 75.47.
That's pretty awesome.
I still have no idea why they did that, because it definitely doesn't help game performance very much, because you get less time to do things in each frame. And
Yeah.
for the most part, the extra refresh rate isn't giving you anything, because until even the Swan Crystal, the screen was a blurry mess. So it's not like you're getting that much out of the extra 15 FPS. So it just feels like kind of a poor decision on their part. But thankfully, they left that register in so that I could change it to 60, and then everything is way easier to do. And, I get a lot more performance, like Ptoing said.
You're basically sort of underclocking it, right? Sort of, in a way.
Well, the actual what it does is the way the screen refreshes, it has 256 horizontal pixels, but you only see 224 of them. And then vertically, this is the trick, is it displays 144, and then it has a whole bunch of extra lines that aren't on screen anymore. And so that's the register. It lets you set how many extra lines you have there. And
Oh, okay.
so the pixels always go across at the same speed, but depending on how many lines you have more time in your frame, and that lowers the effective refresh rate.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, so not only is it lowering the refresh rate, but it gives you all these extra cycles where nothing is happening on the video, and that gives you a lot more performance trying to access video areas. So it's an optimization more ways than it seems. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And so, I guess going back to the start of the project, when you were envisioning Firelancer as a game, I guess what were the main concepts that you were trying to go for, or the main gameplay things you really wanted to make happen?
Well, the design actually has evolved many, many, many times. At first, I was going to have no items. I was going to have it a time attack game only. It was going to be a very different game, and so it's gone through a bunch of changes. But
Sure.
the core concepts I've always kept are encourage speed killing by making the stages advance faster when you do. So it gives you, the dynamic of a caravan type game without that. That's what it does. It gives you that dynamic where everything's kind of aggressive and, you're always doing stuff. So it keeps you engaged, which is the big thing. And the other one is simplicity and diversity. Basically everything that looks the same will always behave the same. So like all the bullets, if they have the same sprite, they move at the same speed.
Oh, okay.
And like enemies, if they look the same, they're going to shoot the same pattern. Things like that.
Right.
And diversity is in, there's a lot of characters, there's a lot of ways to play the characters. There's going to be a bunch of stages that you can pick between. There's all the different modes. There's lots of ways to play the game based on how you want to play it. And I think those two are kind of the big driving things behind all the game design.
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned the concept of having the same enemy shoot the same pattern. I remember there's this example to me that stands out in Danmaku Unlimited 3. They have this ship that normally shoots just kind of a regular style pattern, but then in like stage 4, all of a sudden that ship shoots an unkillable laser at you. It's like, what the fuck?
Oh, that's really rude.
Yeah, like it gets you like every time I tell people to play that game or watch people playing it, it gets them every single time because that same enemy that for 3 stages has shot just this normal pattern all of a sudden shoots this.
Is it exactly the same? Not even like a palette swap, just like
it
100%?
Is the exact same ship.
That's like Kaizo level trolling.
I don't know what he was thinking. I guess maybe he just didn't feel like he had enough time maybe to make another ship or something. But yeah, it only happens that one time, and then the rest of the game it doesn't happen anymore. But yeah, there's that one time where that ship all of a sudden shoots this laser at you that it never did before.
Okay, upon review Mark admits that the shape of the ship in question is a little different than the others. But this difference is pretty subtle at first, and the ship suddenly shooting a laser in your face still remains pretty troll.
So that's something I actually am mindful of more about in these days when I play shmups, is paying attention to if the enemies are consistent.
Yeah, like the least you can do, I feel, is at least the color swap. And Actually, in the version that we had at Stunfest, there were a bunch of enemies, especially like in the B and C stages, that were color swaps of earlier enemies. And then for this version, all the enemies apart from the popcorn ones are unique. So there's like no color swaps on the road. It's only the smallest, the rotating popcorn ships.
Yeah. Yeah, I was really impressed with the demo as far as the variety of stuff you run up against. It's definitely, like you guys are saying, it's diverse. It's not, the same enemies over and over with slight variations and stuff. Ptoing, speaking of the design, how did you come up with, I guess, the visual aesthetic that you were going for in this game?
So partly the aesthetic is thanks to it starting with like the idea that it was like 4 colors for everything. That's how Trap started, like what he wanted it to be in the beginning. So I made the very first sprites I made were only like the 3 colors plus transparency. And to this day, the sprites kind of sort of keep that paradigm where the enemy palettes, like, so it's like a 16 color per palette, and the enemy palettes are laid out in a way where each has black and white, and then there's like 4 3-color palettes, and then there's like a shared darkest color. And so I can use all those colors in the same ship, but usually, so I use like, for example, the green, and then I can use the yellow for the stripes, and then I have like usually like a metal kind of ramp in there, so I can get some grays in there. So that was like how that happened, basically. And then for the bosses are definitely like a bit inspired by Dodonpachi in terms of how I render them. And like I also am kind of using a similar palette approach to the bosses, because obviously on a boss, like you just use like all the 15 colors. There's no point not using all of them. And in Dodonpachi, basically, not just Dodonpachi, actually also like Donpachi, Dodonpachi, and Tatsujin-O as well, and some other Toaplan games use the approach where sprites are 7 primary colors, so like not as in like red, green, blue, or whatever, but like 7 main colors. Mm-hmm. Then like 4 colors for metal accents usually, and then the 3 colors for accents like the cockpit and the stripes in Dodonpachi. And I do something similar, but I also use like full black and white on all of them, and then I make it so that my main colors can ramp into, like that the metal colors and the accent colors can ramp into the darkest colors of the main colors, so I can stretch the palettes out a bit. So it's a bit more flexible actually than what Cave does in Dodonpachi.
How about with the shapes, and like I guess, I don't know how you say it, like the structuring, the shaping of the enemy ships and the player ships and stuff. Did you guys kind of come up with that together, or was that more of just what you went with, Ptoing?
Originally the graphics were done by Trap. Like he made like, I don't know, like 3 ships and like the player sprite and like the bullets, like 2 of the bullet types. And I kind of riffed off of those. And at then the original Zako, for example, they were like these biplane looking things, right? And I made biplanes originally, but then we decided like everything is kind of sci-fi, so the biplanes are kind of out of place. So I remade them. And the funny thing is there's actually I made an animated GIF of this, which is on my Twitter account somewhere, where I took the biplane sprite and flipped it upside down and then edited it, and that's the current like Zako.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, like the lid, because it's got like big back wings and it's got like these little frontal wings, right? And then like on the biplane, it's the other way around.
Right.
But generally, we didn't talk about like it's the graphics are mostly like up to me. And for example, in the beginning, we only had like one player ship, the firelancer, and then at some point, Trap was like, I want to make a second ship, and then I just made 4, I think I made like 4 sprites or 3 sprites, and he just picked which one he liked the most. And then another one has become that green popcorn enemy that goes straight down, the kind of wider looking one. Mm-hmm. And the other one I also flipped upside down and turned into the helicopter when it came.
Oh,
like
cool.
When Trap added the helicopter. So like I did some recycling of stuff there. Trap generally doesn't tell me what to do in terms of stuff. It's just like, yeah, we need like some more enemies, and then I just do something, and then on a boss he might say like, yeah, this boss maybe can you change it a bit, like I can't think of any good bullet patterns. But like with the bosses I did so far, I made the bosses without not even thinking much about the bullet patterns, and then Trap just riffed off like the design of the boss and did what he could come up with, basically.
That's cool. So it sounds like the gameplay and the visual, like depending on the situation, sometimes the visuals inspire the gameplay, and then other times the gameplay inspires the visuals. It sounds like just kind of a back and forth between you two.
Pretty much.
Like one of the funny things actually, very early on in development, we had this like around 13-hour Skype call where he was programming and I was doing graphics, and I was like screen sharing one of the enemy bullets. When Trap, like the ones that Trap made, they looked more like a kind of arrowhead V shape, and I made them a bit more like bubbly and like I wanted to make them like just stand out a bit more just for visibility. So I closed the gap basically, and those are like the triangular bullets. And then Trap said like on Skype, he said like those look kind of like onigiri. And then I had the idea to make like an onigiri pickup, like for like a hidden score pickup or something. And then I had the idea to make like a big onigiri and like came up with like the onigiri. At first it was like onigiri systems for like the thing, and then at the end it was like now it's onigiri service. And then I gave that onigiri, like the big one, a face, and that's how we got our little onigirun mascot thing.
Yeah. Nice.
So it's organic basically, like how that happened.
Yeah. So, Trap, when you're thinking about all the different ships you wanted to add into the game, how did you come up with the 3 different ship types?
I don't know. I guess it kind of happened naturally. The firelancer one was the one that I even started with, because when I first started making the thing, I was like, all right, I'm making a shooting game. What's the number one thing I want? Options. So I made the ship with options. So that the firelancer ship is the one that's been there literally the entire development. The Zamenhof was me just being like, I think I was like on a serious Gradius 4 kick or something, and I was just like, oh, I need options. I need the Gradius options. I need them to do the thing, because I thought it would work kind of well just based on the way the stages had been laid out at the time, and they continue to be laid out in a similar way, so it still works. And so I just put it together. I'm pretty sure I used the Firelancer ship sprite for a bit too, and try it out. And I thought it felt really good, so I kept it. And then with Polaris, the helicopter, I forget who had uploaded it, but I've been watching some super play of Air Duel, and I was like, ooh, that's a cool helicopter. And so I played Air Duel a little bit, and I was like, ooh, that's a fun helicopter, and I want that in my game. So I was very inspired by the Air Duel helicopter when I designed him and put him together. But I felt like Air Duel didn't really control it very well, so I iterated on the actual movement for it quite a lot. It even had changes to how it moved within a month of the release. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, and it's good that I did that because it feels so much better now. Yeah, that ship took so much tweaking. it's kind of crazy. It was a lot of work, but I do think it turned out quite nice and quite fun. So I'm happy with it.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever played a shmup where the way you can rotate the shot like that, where free shot for a bit and then it has to lock back into place and stuff. I don't know if I've played a shmup where you're able to do that. So I thought that was really cool, how you could like freely rotate it.
Yeah, I think Under Defeat is supposed to be like that, but I've actually never played Under Defeat. So people have been like, "Oh, it's like the Under Defeat ship," and I'm like, "Okay, cool," because
And it's a chopper.
yeah, it is a helicopter, and I've seen it like turn around a lot, but I've never played it, so I don't actually know how it feels in that game. Supposedly they're similar.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember when I was trying out the different ships to see which one I liked the best. I actually had a hard time picking between which ones because they're all really fun to play. And one thing I thought was really cool is how you can like lock the options into place on the option ship. Is that something that you're able to do in other shmups? I don't think you can like lock them into place in Gradius or anything like that.
In
No,
Gradius 5, I think, isn't there in Gradius 5 an option type where you can select that does that?
If there
Or
is,
something
I don't
similar?
know, because I've also never played Gradius 5. So
I've played Gradius 5. I don't remember that though.
I'm not sure. I mean I have the game. I almost once you see that, but but that game is so long, like 80 minutes. It's like
It's a long game.
it might have. I'm not sure. I think it has a bunch of different styles you can pick from.
Yeah, that's cool. I thought at first my strategy was just to stick those options up front and have them just point blank everything.
it's actually a pretty good strat on bosses. Like
Yeah.
that'll melt some of the bosses pretty good.
Yeah.
Drop them in front of the bosses and like sit back.
Take a nap.
There's also, I don't know if you unlocked. There's a fourth ship as well that you can unlock. So
I have not unlocked it. No. Oh crap.
he's out of control. He's the little Onigiri, and he has cool glasses. And basically, I seem to recall at first we didn't know what to do with his shot, but we ended up turning it into this concept that I made quite a while ago, where I had shown the firelancer ship, but the options, instead of shooting like regular shots, they had like energy balls that were supposed to be like a lance if you did like the forward option configuration. So
Okay.
it's like, super powerful and piercing and like, but like really short range. So you got to like get up close and stab dudes with it. For Onigiri, and we made that his main shot, and then now his options are effectively what the other ships have with their main shot.
Okay.
the options are pretty much the same in terms of the secondary shot is basically like the one in Firelancer where you have like straight or spread options.
Mm-hmm.
And he shoots like little like nigiri sushi.
That's cool. Kind of are they like piercing style, kind of like Gain and Grega? Is it kind of like that?
It depends on the style you have. Like it depends like on the ABCD style. So like A and C, no, B and C they are piercing, right? And A and D they are not.
Yeah, on B and C the options are piercing, and on A and C the main shot is piercing, and that's still the case here, even though the main shot is the range limited one. So if you pick Type A, you have the really strong short range thing, but you got the weak options, and it gives you a reason to play around with the different styles, especially for him, because all of them play quite differently, especially for him, just because the different styles also will give you different amounts of range. So
Yeah.
The funny thing with the bonus ship basically is that like I wanted like a bonus ship from the very beginning, like the kind of unlockable meme ship kind of thing, like little mascot. And at the beginning, Trap only wanted one ship, and he was like, if there's only like one, like the Firelancer ship plus like a kind of slightly overpowered ship, everyone is just going to use that. And then when he had like 3 ships, I was like, so what about the Onigiri ship? And then he said like he couldn't come up with any ideas for it, but if I would, then he'd put it in. And then I thought like, yeah, he made that laser thing, and like I had the idea that he could have like homing fish as the bomb. So he shoots a bunch of like homing goldfish. And there's like another funny side effect actually in the design where we have a self-imposed limit that each of the player ships only uses up to 30 tiles. So 30 8x8 tiles in memory. And when I first made the ships, the fish, the rotating fish, I gave them basically, it's like 32 rotations or something. So like the bullets have, which is so 9 tiles, and then the rest would be flipped, right? And because of that, I didn't have graphics, like I didn't have space for a little exhaust flame. So I thought we could just reuse the shot, which is like basically like these like plasma onigiri looking things. So we just flip it upside down and we can use it as an exhaust. And then I had the idea, because it's the same graphic, we can make it do damage. So onigiri can actually damage enemies with his exhaust.
That's cool.
And then in the meantime, I simplified the fish and made them only 16 rotations. So now technically we could, but we didn't because it's fun.
That's awesome. Is there any points in the game that you're able to just park that bad boy on top of a boss or something? And
the bomb gives you a lot of invincibility, and the bomb actually does a lot of damage. So you can get right in front of the boss, hit the bomb, and then just sit on top of the boss and deal insane amounts of damage. It's quite amusing.
Is the damage like point blanking and DDP? Is it like really heavy type of thing if you get him with the exhaust?
Yeah, the exhaust is a lot of damage actually, but the weird thing about the damage is when you have piercing shots, they do the same amount of damage each time they hit, but they have like a I don't remember how many it is, but they have a cooldown between times they can hit. So if you're shooting enemies, most of the time your piercing is not going to hit the enemy a second time, but against bosses it does. So with bosses, it's really good to get point blank because your options have limited range, and so you have to get within the right range so that it hits multiple times to get a lot of extra damage out.
That's cool.
So yeah, you can get a lot of extra damage by point blanking bosses, but against enemies it mostly doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's interesting, like the different kind of strats. Like another thing is that you can do with the helicopter. He's got like a very, very strong bomb as well. And the thing with it is he shoots that like fireball.
Yeah, Hadoken.
Yeah, exactly. But the fireball speeds up a bit. So if you go really close to a boss and then shoot that, like the fireball is really, really slow. So it like takes longer to go through than when you shoot it from further away, where the fireball has the maximum speed. It still slows down a bit, I think, while going through the boss. But like it will slow down more if you point blank, basically.
Oh, that's cool. Because it just has more frames where it's hitting the boss, it sounds like.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. Is because
you can also go inside because the helicopter has quite long invulnerability as well, right? During the bomb.
Oh yeah. Because when the bomb part is out, pretty much the whole time he's invincible. So you get right up close to the boss, and just like Onigirin, you let the bomb loose, and then you just sit on top of the boss and deal a ton of damage.
You can do that with someone. The only one you can't do that is like firelancer, basically, right?
Well, it doesn't really benefit you with Samenhof either. So, because with him you can just park the options and then you're good.
Yeah, that's true.
You have the different ships, but you also have the subtypes. So how did you come up with that system? It kind of reminds me of DFK a little.
I like Batrider a lot, so I stole the ship styles from Batrider. Like it's almost exactly the same. Where you got your strong shot, your strong option, your strong everything, and your fast everything. So it's pretty much actually identical to Batrider. Just numbers are different, obviously, and some of the behavior is different, but it's the same basic idea. And it was just like, well, this will theoretically make the game more replayable because you can play it in 4 basically different ways with each ship, because the different amounts of damage you do and the hitbox sizes and all the little tweaks end up making your routes just the slightest amount different, because you gotta take advantage of your style's advantages and patch over the things it lacks in.
Yeah, speaking of Batrider, and other raising style shmups, I was thinking when I was playing it, it has a medal system that's really similar to Grega, right? as far as your scoring?
Kind of similar. The way the pickups work is the same, where when you pick it up, it sets your level to that 1+1, so it makes recovery quite easy. But the way you drop it is different.
Okay.
Because in Garega and Batrider and whatever, when the metal goes off screen, you drop your chain. And I felt like the game was a little too busy for that, and that if you dropped your chain by dropping the metals, it would be way too punishing. So I don't know if I made it more or less punishing, but now it resets when you die. So
I think that works better. It's a lot less punishing.
yeah, especially because when you get hit, that's when your chain drops. So if you do it right, it's actually quite easy to recover your medals from that. If you have a medal on screen or whatever, you take a hit and then you spawn back pretty fast. So you can just go grab the medal and then everything's good again.
It's also, from what I understand, am I right that like it basically resets the medal value to like the lowest as soon as you get hit, basically. But then if you careen into like a medal while exploding, you pick it up, it takes that value, right?
Yep.
Like, so you can.
Yep, precisely. Like I said, it's all about consistency. You drop the chain when you get hit, and then any point after that, you can pick it up and you keep your chain. Pretty straightforward, but it's a little odd. But it's one of those
fun.
things.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of going about it because I'm not a really strong Garega player, but I've been kind of dabbling a little more in playing it for score. And the other day I was playing Garega and I was thinking, okay, early on or later on in the game and you're low on lives, is it better to just fly into a metal if you know you're going to get hit immediately afterward, or rather than letting that metal drop? Because if you drop the metal, your chain is goner. Yeah, it doesn't sound like you run into that with Firelancer though.
Right, especially because in Firelancer, when you pick up a medal, you get a 20 frame invincibility. So you can actually really abuse that in some really fun ways by just like grabbing a medal and just running into a bunch of bullets to just get them out of the way.
That's awesome. I think I remember when I was playing the demo being confused about that, actually. Because I was picking up a medal, and yeah, I was like, did those bullets hit me? I think they did, but I'm still alive.
You also get points for tanking bullets while invincible, right?
Yeah, I totally forgot that was even a thing, but it's 50 points each. So if you manage to turn that into a worthwhile source of points, good on you.
Maybe on the C boss when he does his, like, when he comes down and does like that really dense kind of.
Yeah, I guess that's maybe like 500 points.
Yeah.
You're really not going to get very much out of it, I swear.
Little swaggy way to add some extra points, maybe.
Yeah, I guess so.
And that way you also even get a points for dying. So I guess points for everything.
So I remember when when I was reading over your guys' original post or Trap's original post about the game, he was saying that you were saying that you weren't going towards, Don Maku. You wanted to go for a different style of gameplay. And so I guess my question is, what are the other games that really inspired Firelancer's gameplay?
Well, the number one's definitely Thunder Dragon 2. There's a lot of concepts from just all of the NMK games that are in Firelancer, but Thunder Dragon 2 is definitely the biggest one because that also has the whole thing with the air enemies being like wave based where you can speed it up. It has a pretty similar bomb bonus thing going on. There's quite a lot of similarities there. And other NMK games are big influences as well, like Gun Nail, P47 Aces, games like that. But also, one of the other big influences, definitely Flying Shark.
Oh, yeah.
That's my game, really. Like, I've been playing that game for a very long time, and it's still one of my, top 3 shooting games. And it comes down to the idea of simplicity and consistency, where everything is very, if it looks the same, it acts the same, and everything is really consistent and flows really nicely in that game. And so it's one of those things that it's like I'm trying to aspire to that level of smoothness and fluidity.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm there yet, but it's definitely a game to look at for flow, really. Those are definitely the biggest two. Batrider is up there, Garega's up there, as one could expect. There's a few bits and bobs from other obscure games, like the whole boss bonus system is very close to Wing Force, which was a prototype shooting game that got dumped like 2 or 3 years ago.
Wow.
And I played that and I was like, this boss bonus thing is brilliant. I need it. So I did it. But it's like pretty much the same system. It's how many medals you picked up in the stage times bonus you got for killing the boss fast. I felt like that was brilliant. It stacks the importance of grabbing medals, and which also is not related to the value of the medals. So it's like, ooh, should I pick up the low value medal and drop my chain, or should I skip the medal and lose the extra boss bonus? It's another source of thing to do for score, I guess.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the scoring system, because I've been thinking, like, how would I put together a scoring system? That sounds like a very daunting prospect to me. So what was kind of your philosophy or game plan for putting the score system together?
Well, the game is ostensibly designed around heavy, which does not have a super deep scoring system. It's pretty much the base concept of kill things fast to get more enemies, and then the medals on top, and then the boss bonus stuff, and that's pretty much it. That's about it. For a long time, there wasn't even items. There were no medals, so it was just kill things, and then that was it. But with this, it kind of it gets a lot more complicated because you have to balance out the sources of the points, and so you have to constantly kind of go over enemies and tweak their values, change the values of the medals, tweak how much boss bonus you get. A lot of things to tweak.
Yeah.
In terms of getting a score balance that feels normal, because you don't want it where your tick points for hitting enemies is massive and your amount for actually killing them is low. You don't want it where 2/3 of your score comes from boss bonus or things like that. So having to balance the stuff out is actually quite difficult. Somehow doing light and real war were much easier, even though they have actual scoring systems, because those, it was kind of like take the base values from heavy and tweak them based on the scoring system, and then kind of apply it throughout everything in the game, and then it kind of flows surprisingly. Yeah. But
it sounds like heavy was the foundation work, so even if it's not as complicated on paper, you're building the foundation in that mode. So
yeah, exactly. It's definitely the mode that everything was made for, and then the rest was made around it. Although Real War took a lot of tweaking too. A little bit for score. I don't know if I feel happy with how that balance turned out, but trying to get the values for how the chain should behave is a lot of work, because you got to be like, oh, this source should raise it this amount, this should lower it this much, it should drop this much over time, there's so many things, and scoring systems are hard. Don't make me make them.
Yeah, I don't envy your position at all. Definitely not. Ptoing, I was going to ask you, besides doing the visuals, did you have a large part in like maybe QA testing the game, or doing like a lot of testing and stuff like that?
Well, I did test quite a bit. Like I played it quite a bit, and I'm not like, as I would say, like on average, I'm not as good as Trap when it comes to playing shmups. Like I'm an okay player, but like not like super good. Like obviously Trap, in terms of like the game itself, has the benefit. He knows all the patterns. He knows exactly like how the bosses work, and like he knows, okay, this pattern I can just like tap dodge, and here I don't have to move. So I don't necessarily know that. So I guess that helped a bit. But yeah, like for example, I played Trial quite a bit, and I gave feedback in that regard, and yeah. But the other funny thing is with Trap, you always have to be careful that he doesn't get like more inspiration. So then it's liable that you put in more stuff. For example, the fish. I made the graphics for the fish, I think, when was that? Like at the end of October, where Trap was like, I'm playing Bath, and now it's got these like little like things you can uncover and then shoot. I want to put something like that into Firelancer. And I think the fish actually like helped a lot to make it a bit more strategic because before that it was like a lot more freeform. It's still very freeform how you can move, but you like can't forget about the fish, especially in heavy where they give you extra medals. So that's quite cool, I think. Nice little addition. But I think we now put like a moratorium on extra scoring features.
Yeah.
The Q&A, we had like a bunch of people like Eaglet, Plasmo, and a bunch of other people in the Slack basically that started testing a couple of months before the release. And they'll keep on testing like with new versions that we're going to make.
That's really awesome. That's cool, you guys. The community's close-knit enough you can get Grega players like Plasmo and Eaglet on board and stuff to try things out and give you feedback. What was the number one thing when people were QA testing it that they were like, like they were having problems with? Or was there anything like that?
Config. Because there's no program. Because you got to edit a text file. That was easily the number one, like, what the hell, man? So... Admittedly, I completely expected that, but writing config programs is harder than making games, I swear. So I didn't do it.
Yeah, I don't envy you. Even in Game Maker, like I gave up on adding controller support to my own little, just like project shmups. I was like, screw it, I'll just use Joy to Key.
Yeah, for real, it's such a mess.
So I had some questions about, I guess, the demo itself. Is the demo like an emulator that's running the ROM, or how is that working exactly?
The demo, the PC version, is the game recompiled for Windows. It is
okay.
like it's not an emulator, it is an actual port, and that's how it has some of the nice cool extra features like putting the HUD outside of the game, which you can only get that with a couple certain resolutions, but it's handy for some things. And and then actually there's a thing in the secret menu you get when you complete all 100 data levels that'll let you get an extra feature on the PC version that's not on the WonderSwan version, but you got to get to level 100 to get there. So it's a lot of play. So
well, I just might get there after in a few weeks here. I'm still planning on submitting a score to your guys' contest, which I should mention now is. So when you guys launched the demo, you also have this really cool idea of having a little scoring competition going along with it. So I guess how did you guys come up with that idea?
I wanted people to play the game, and I know people like money, so I decided let's give people money to play the game. But at first, I think I wanted to just do heavy, and then I decided it would be more fun if all the 3 main modes were represented, because then you could pick which one you wanted to play more. And so you weren't like, it didn't, so that you don't have to feel like, oh, only money for heavy, so I can't go play, I can't like grind out light because I'm not going to get anything for it. So,
right.
So I figured just make it for all 3 main modes, and then people can play what they want and optimize whichever scoring system they like more.
Yeah, I remember when I was reading through when you guys announced the scoring competition, then I was reading through my Discord, Jamers, and a lot of really good players are in there. I was basically, I took out Notebook. I had like Xerox in there too. I was like, okay, what ships are they playing? Because I'm not going to play those ships. I'm going to find like the most obscure ship I can to play. I think that opportunity's out the window, but I think anyway, I was saying that's a cool idea to have more than just the one mode to have different options for players to go for. So, along with the scoring competition, you also have this really cool system of having these QR codes that you can use to submit your scores. How did you come up with that exactly?
Well, I wanted a way to submit scores to an online scoreboard. And so originally I was just going to have, rather at first I was just using the text codes because that doesn't require too much work to implement. And I mean, it sucks, but people do it. So whatever. A while ago, I mean, geez, I guess it was like 3 or 4 years ago, I found the QR code standard and I was like, ooh, this doesn't seem impossible to implement. So I wrote a QR code generator and put that in there. And so basically that just encodes a URL. And so when you scan it, it basically acts like just entering the code below onto the scoreboard. But all you have to do is take a picture of the barcode and there you go. It's very easy to submit scores now. And that's, again, going back to the idea of making something for everybody and making it easy to do anything in the game. It's another accessibility feature that is just like, it's kind of cool because it also is like, it's a QR code, so it kind of fits in with the era of the hardware it's designed for, because QR codes were huge in Japan around like 2002, 2003. And so it's kind of like fits in with the whole thing that the whole game's kind of going for.
Yeah, I remember when that first popped up on screen, I was like, oh, this is like a legit competition. We got QR codes, and it had that just extra touch of, I don't know what, like care, I guess, that now I feel like every shmup should have that.
I agree. I think QR codes are great and everybody should use them.
That's awesome. You guys are still at work on the demo, it sounds like. How far along do you guys think you are before getting near release? As far as how much work do you guys have left?
A lot. I'm rewriting the engine, so
oh geez,
a lot. Yeah, so I'm rewriting the engine because the current one, I don't think I can scale it to any more stages really. So it kind of needs to be done, and I think it'll turn out better for it. A long amount of work to get back to where we are now, and then after that, there's 5 more stages to make. So it's
holy smokes.
Yeah, there's a ton of work ahead, but I think it'll be doable, happen at some point.
Yeah, it'll definitely happen. There's 5 more stages. Like in terms of graphics, 5 more stages than the stages we have at the moment. I have leftover tiles, so I want to nicen them up a bit more. We already have a bunch of bosses that I've made, some of which are not going to be used, either because I don't like them or they probably, I made this weird kind of giant mutated crab enemy, but that one would probably need a load of sprites for the claws and the legs to look good, and that might kind of make it not happen, I guess. We have to see. But in terms of graphics, yeah, it's a fair amount of work left over. But as far as the front end and stuff goes, all the menus and stuff, that's basically solved. So that's, yeah, very happy about that, having that out of the way.
Yeah, you guys have done an excellent job with that kind of thing. And you guys released a demo, but for a demo, it has a lot of stuff that you'd expect to see in a final release type thing where it has the rotating screen. I was really happy about that because I like to play on my big old CRT and it's rotated sideways. So if the game can't rotate, that makes me pretty sad. But Firelancer can do it, which is really awesome.
That's pretty much standard now, I think, in shmups on PC, right?
You would think, but there's a lot of indie shmups I've been picking up and there's no freaking rotation. It's driving me crazy.
Really?
Yes. Like that Shikondo Soul Eater, that thing will not rotate.
Wow, that's weird.
Yeah, I know.
But I guess, yeah. Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah, I don't know. Some people are forgetting that people do rotate their monitors here. So,
but I mean, who forgets that? If you are a shmup dev, you should be playing shmups, and if you play shmups, you know that.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
That's what I always find really weird. I've been talking to some people, and there recently was a guy in a pixel art server that I'm going to, and he's like, like he wants to make a shmup, and I'm like, so you play shmups? That's cool. He's like, I don't really play shmups. It's just like it seems easy, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, if you don't play shmups, like, why you want to make a shmup? Like, I don't play RPGs. I would never like want to make an RPG. Like, why would you make a genre a game in a genre that you don't play yourself a lot? So you're just gonna like run into a wall.
I think a lot of people outside the shmup community think of shmups as a lot simpler than they are because, on the surface they seem like really simple games, but when you look into what goes into making a really quality game, it's no simple task by any means.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you can definitely do something that looks like a shmup and has the functionality of a shmup fairly easy. But then you look at like things like Euro shmups, right, where you have like inertia or like just like the small enemies have too much health and all that kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
And then I remember it was, I think, in an interview by Cave where they were saying that like very, very early on when they started, like they tried that like different people would like try to make level designs. And like those people that didn't play shmups themselves and were like not halfway decent at shmups, they couldn't make good levels because if you are not like halfway good at least at like dodging bullets and stuff, like so it becomes hard to make a level that's challenging but not unfair.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, or I think another thing a lot of inexperienced shmup makers do that I would say is a problem is I play some indie shmups where there's a lot of dead downtime between.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, you're just like waiting around a lot for stuff to happen. Oh, that drives me nuts.
Yeah, like the way you have to think about it, like especially in a vertical shmup where you don't have any collision with the like objects in terms of like walls that you have like in horizontal shmups or like that you have in a platformer. That on one hand makes it easy because you have simpler collision than in a platformer, for example. But that means that like the enemies, that's your entire level design. Like that's it. And if that doesn't flow, if that's not like engaging all the time, like having a bit of downtime obviously can be nice every now and then. Like if you have like something really intense going on. But if you have like frequent 10-second downtimes, that just feels like janky, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that like in a good shmup, and I think Trap actually did a really good job with this, the flow kind of has to feel a bit dancey. That like you like hear like something comes in here, then you pick up like the metal, and then like another wave comes in here, and then there's like a bunch of tanks and stuff like that. So like everything has to flow together and feel nice. It can't just when you look at like especially like older like again European made or like American made shmups on the Commodore C64 or like Amiga, they have really really boring enemy waves, like really boring, where it's just like some enemies sine waving into the screen and then. Yeah, it's really bad. So, yeah.
As far as firelancer's, enemy design and the bullet speeds, it just feels really awesome. Because for me, I actually have difficulty playing like older style shmups very often. I just play way too many cave games to like. But there are some like Garega or there's some like Batrider. Well, they're not older, but that style of shmup that I do like, and Firelancer's among them, where it's not a bullet hell, but it's still really engaging and exciting.
Yeah, it's actually similar, which is quite funny that before I was working on Firelancer, I was like mostly playing like more modern stuff like cave games and things like Crimson Clover, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I had played obviously some older stuff as well, but like mostly like the more modern stuff. And through talking with Trap, I got more into like the NMK stuff. For example, I'm trying to 1cc Rapid Hero at the moment, for example. It's nice to get like a variety, and they definitely like the things that you train in like cave shmups versus like NMK style or like the old Torplan shmups. It's like a very different skill set.
Definitely. So I talked to my Discord a little bit before the interview to see if any of the members of the Discord had any questions for you guys. And Plasmo mentioned something about a Sega Saturn port at one point, Trap. Is that right? Was there a Sega Saturn port planned?
A little bit. There are a lot of port things in my head, but most of them are just me goofing around because porting stuff is easier than making stuff.
Right.
So it's like, oh, I'm bored and I don't want to make any stages or anything. Let's just mess around with porting. Yeah, I messed around with it a little bit, but it's really tough to debug Saturn stuff. So it's really not easy to port stuff to there, especially because it's the architecture is a lot more restrictive, I guess, in what you can do. And the way I'd laid out a bunch of my data was not conducive to that. It's not really even possible with the current engine, but the next engine, I'm probably going to do it just for fun. I don't think
Oh,
I'll
wow.
actually do anything with it, but the new engine's design is going to be very portable, so it can theoretically go anywhere. But yeah, the Saturn thing was just me screwing around, and also because you can actually run software from the Saturn cartridge slot, and making something that's physical like that is more appealing to me than a CD. Than anybody could, just copy the CD.
Sure.
It's not really about the DRM part. It's more I like writing protection stuff. So it's less that I want to keep people out and more that I like making stuff that keeps people out. So it's probably not going to happen. It's just one of those things that is fun to mess around with.
Yeah, when I was talking with Plasma about it, yeah, like I said, there could be a number of reasons why, but my guess was just because the Saturn I've heard is so weird to program for that it's probably like way too much work to even bother.
It is very esoteric and strange, and I go between whether I think it's a brilliant architecture or a horrible architecture a lot, and I think the truth is somewhere in between, but it's definitely an odd thing to work with, and you kind of have to plan around it. So it's not something that's super as easy to port to as you might think it would be.
I guess the Saturn is also like a lot more like custom in terms of its architecture, right?
Yeah,
I believe so, yeah.
It's not that much more custom than like PlayStation, but it's definitely less well documented and understood, and that's certainly part of the problem.
Yeah, like the Saturn is definitely pretty janky when it comes to a lot of things. Like they're kind of like the way that they did 3D is like a complete hack, where like the 3D is basically just transformed sprites, like shared sprites. That's it. It's not even real polygons or anything.
Wow, I didn't know that.
It's like because in anything that has like modern kind of 3D, you have triangles, right? So it's just everything is triangles. But because the Saturn uses sprites, everything is actually quads. The fucked up thing about that is that if you make anything, those quads have to be planar, so that they have to be those four like vertices that make up that quad need to be on the same, can't be like slightly off.
Oh, okay.
So like modeling stuff like that would also require you to model in a really weird way, like using like extrusion a lot and making sure that you move like an edge at a time and never like move single vertices, because then like your planes are not planar anymore and stuff like that. So it's wonky as shit. Like it's really fun reading about the guys that like, ported Quake to the Saturn, because obviously in Quake like everything is like the monsters, it's all triangles, and they said what they did is that you move two of the vertices really close together, but then you get like weird like texture shearing in that, so it's another hack on top of a hack. So it's just it's not good.
Yeah, thankfully it doesn't super matter for Firelancer because it's actually sprites, so you don't have to do any of these weird transforms. But
right,
that's one of the advantages of Saturn is it is a 2D system basically, so it works nicely for 2D games like this, whereas PlayStation probably would have enough video RAM, but might not, because Saturn has a lot more, and that's quite handy.
In most cases, when you had like ports that were like on both systems, like arcade ports, like the Capcom fighting games, the Saturn versions are usually better.
Yeah, just because of video RAM, yeah.
Yeah, I remember, well, the Dodonpachi port isn't good on either of them, but I remember playing the PlayStation version and like the bullets aren't even like circular on the PlayStation version. They're like little squarish triangles and stuff. I don't know if that's a problem with the PlayStation itself or what, but
janky port, I would say. Like there's no I don't see any reason why you couldn't make the bullets proper. It's just
I don't know. It's so weird. you guys are planning a WonderSwan release. I didn't know you had to rewrite the entire engine. Is that because the WonderSwan itself can't run the game as it is, or is it more of a porting issue?
It's motivated by the WonderSwan version only. Pretty much all my design is made for the WonderSwan version, and like everything kind of centers around that. I'm running hard against code size limits, and the way I structured my resource stuff is not conducive to making a larger ROM size, which would allow me to fix some things like that.
Uh-huh.
We will soon be running out of ROM space as well, but I can't increase that because the code is not structured in a way where that's even possible. So that's actually the biggest motivator behind the whole thing, behind the whole rewrite, is the fact that we will run out of ROM space before we finish.
Oh, damn.
But the other one is definitely the code size limit, because I could probably implement 1 or 2 more enemies and then I would be out of code space. There are a lot of limits being run into right now that can't be solved without a dramatic restructure. So,
oh man,
it's a little bit unfortunate, but
2 cartridges.
Oh yeah, there we go. Like halfway between. Like, all right, unplug your cartridge and plug in part 2.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Metal Gear Solid style.
Yeah, wasn't there like an R type on the PC Engine that had like 2 cards or something like that?
Yeah, there was which one was that? R-Type 2 or something, yeah. Where they split it in half and released 2 cartridges.
You could use your QR codes as the passcode system.
Yes, there you go. That's the secret.
I think that would be hilariously awesome if you did that, but I obviously understand why you wouldn't. But so you're planning the WonderSwan release. I'm assuming you guys are going to release it physically on a cartridge then, or are you going to like release a ROM and people buy the ROM and put it on a flash card?
The only thing that is set in stone right now is a physical cartridge release with box. I'm exploring other options, but I don't want to rule anything out or rule anything in. So that's the only thing I'm going on the record for, but there's ideas in my head for other versions.
I remember watching your guys' Stunfest interview. Was there an EXA version planned as well, or am I getting confused?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay.
The version we ran at Stunfest I actually have an arcade build, which kind of just makes a few modifications to the game flow so that it would work in an arcade environment. But that's mostly just so me and my friends can play it in our cabs.
Nice.
There's no actual plan to take that anywhere, but it is there. So it's like, if we do want to do it, then, it's kind of already done. So it definitely adds more possible options anyways.
And if it doesn't go anywhere, it's always nice to have it like as an exhibition piece for places like Stunfest.
Yeah, exactly. It's
very true.
It's definitely a much easier way to show to people than giving them a tiny handheld.
One question I had,
as suggested by Discord member and former guest, Cloudy Music,
about the physical releases. How do you make a physical release of a WonderSwan game? Are you guys 3D printing and having the PCB? I don't know. Like, I'll let you answer that.
We are not far enough to have worked out too many of the logistics, but the actual technical part is kind of done in my head, at least. Like, I kind of know everything that has to be done to make it happen. It's just I haven't actually started doing any of that because it's quite a ways away, and it would be kind of pointless to waste the effort right now. The basic thing is you got to have the cart PCB, you got to get your ROM, your SRAM, and a mapper. So all of the cartridges have mappers on them, which also feature protection. I don't like sacrificing carts, so I'm going to kind of clone the mapper and probably add some features to it to improve the performance a bit. And so then that's the whole cart PCB itself, and then you got to get the case for the cart and the sticker, which can probably be 3D printed, or we can figure out a more efficient way to do it. I don't know.
I don't think that 3D printing would even be the most efficient way. Like, I know the guy that runs RGCD, and they make C64 games on cards. And like those are not 3D printed, and they get them done somewhere. So if you have like a 3D model of like a cartridge or whatever, then you can get it done somewhere in China fairly cheaply, like, but properly done, like not just like 3D printed.
I see.
Yeah, I've got friends that actually make stuff like this, so I was going to ask them before I actually do anything that requires any commitment. Yeah, so you make the cart and then design the booklet, you print the booklet, you figure out how to get the cardboard for the box, and just kind of put it all together, I guess.
Is this the first indie game ever released for the WonderSwan or homebrew style game?
It depends what you count as homebrew, because Judgment Silver Sword and Dicing Night were both Wonder Witch games at first. And then
okay.
They each of them won. So Judgment Silver Sword won the Wonder Witch Grand Prix 2001, and Dicing Night won 2002. And as the award for winning them, they got their games made in the physical carts and sold. So also technically you could count those as homebrew releases, but kind of not. I don't know.
I should have asked you earlier, how did you guys go about getting music created for this game? I'm assuming you'd have to figure out how to work with the sound chip and everything.
I forget how we got through to him, but Ptoing I'll let you explain it.
So because I'm in the demo scene, and there's this Japanese guy on Twitter, Takashi Kawano, and he knows a lot of chiptune musicians in Japan, and he also speaks fairly well, fairly good English. So I asked him, and like he follows me, I follow him, and he follows me because of my C64 stuff. And I asked him, do you know anyone that does like WonderSwan music? And he was like, yeah, I know this one guy here. And then like his name is Watanabe, like Atsushi Watanabe, and he actually programmed sound driver for the WonderSwan, which we are using at the moment. And like he made most of the music that's in the game at the moment, but we don't know how it's going to be going forward because he's super busy. So yeah, he might not be doing any more music for it, sadly.
Oh, I hope you guys, I can get a hold of him or something.
We do have someone like Moffat, like he's a friend and co-worker, I think, of Trap, and he's really good as well. So
yeah, I'd imagine, not many people out there are able to know much about working with the WonderSwan's music and all that. Well, awesome. It's been great talking to you guys. Do you guys have any additional things you'd want to mention about Firelancer before we close up?
Play the game. Put up your scores.
Try beating Jameis and Zarok.
Good luck with that. Have you seen Zarak's replay? That is nuts.
So I was watching live while he was doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's gonna beat that. Like that would be really impressive.
I think it's possible to beat it just about, like with a few points maybe, but yeah, it's very, very hard. And the same is like Jameis. I think Jameis run is like very optimized. It's probably possible to get a bit more points, but like it's all of the three modes, like beating the scores that are on top at the moment, it's hard. Probably doable, but hard.
I don't know. Aiko sounded pretty confident that he could beat Chalmers' light score, so maybe it's possible. But yeah, the other two modes are pretty hardcore right now. Heavy has gone off the rails, in my opinion. Those scores are unbelievable.
All of them, like all three, but especially obviously I don't think I have seen most of Jamer's videos, but like the way in which they utilize strategic suicides to kill enemies with shrapnel to get like the waves quicker and then also get the bomb bonus quicker, because you get like a bomb when you suicide, even though you don't get the bomb bonus if you get the third bomb. But like, yeah, you get a second bomb really quick basically. So it's interesting. So
very interesting to watch people play it because it's very different how I expected it to be played. It's not bad because I think it's actually much more interesting than I thought it was going to be.
But
so
to be honest, like I don't think that's the case I think that's the case for most shmups. I don't think that like like Garaga, for example, I don't think that like Yagawa planned out everything like what people did in that game in terms of like milking and things like that. So if you wait long enough, people playing the games, the super players, will know more about how the game works than the actual programmer.
Yeah, you pick it apart differently, and so you find different threads to pull on differently. It's very interesting to see the difference in playstyle.
Yeah, I'm really excited I was able to talk with you guys about the game. I've been enjoying it a lot, and I think it has a lot of potential when that final release comes out to be, something really special for sure.
Yeah, I hope so. I think so too, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's going to be cool, but like I have to say that like it's both the when we demoed it at Stunfest and now because of the scoring competition, seeing how people are reacting to it and like how what kind of crazy scores they are getting. It's like a nice like energy burst for like just keeping on developing it. Basically, it's nice. Yeah, it's motivating.
Well, awesome. Thanks for coming on, you guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, it was fun.